Now, today we are going to be reviewing the Republic Fighter Tank with 262 pieces. This is the 2022 release for the kind of mid-summer wave, like spring wave, mid-spring to summer wave, kind of an oddball set with 262 pieces for 7 and up. Also, this is set 75342 with a bit of a on Mr. Stormtrooper, with a bit of a Ahsoka 322nd Trooper in the corner there. If you're wondering why Mr. Stormtrooper is over there, we will get to that in a second. This set includes the Mace Windu that was featured in the gunship, a 187th Legion Clone Trooper, which is very good to see. 2 of those, in fact, and then also a Clone Commander for those. Very good to see. It's very similar to an airborne trooper, so I can only assume that it's supposed to be an airborne trooper, but they're like, yeah, this is also a commander. And then also 2 standard battle droids. Now, this set does retail for 40 USD or 40 US dollars, which is definitely an interesting price point to put at the 262 pieces. I will admit it is quite a decent set. It does also come with a fair amount of stickers to go at that price point. And before we get started looking at the actual set, the box art is very nice, being at what I can only assume is a bit of Geonosis territory. Interesting that there's no Geonosian battle droids, but I digress. If we spin it to the back of the box, where you will be able to see the fighter tank for a brief moment, it does have some wheels. Mr. Stormtrooper has fallen over. It does have some wheels. It does have some spring-loaded shooters on the side. It does have a bit of a hatch in the front and back to fit a minifigure. So you can realistically fit about 2 to 3. We will be testing that limit, but I believe 3 is the maximum. 2 is definitely the relative amount that you can probably fit. It does have the thumb tabs at the side, which is very unfortunate. I did try to risk the box by not using the thumb tabs. I will show you what happens when you do the thumb tabs mistake incorrectly. This is my General Grievous box, and as you can see, ignoring the thumb tabs definitely was not the solution here, as it does look absolutely just atrocious. So I do recommend, although the thumb tabs do look very bad, if you do get a bad opening of a box, it will look worse and far less presentable than if you simply just use the thumb tabs, because this is far worse than this. So note to anybody that's out there, this is definitely a mistake some of the time. When it does work out, it looks great, but when it doesn't, it's very sad and disappointing. The reason Mr. Stormtrooper is here is because he won this set at the Emperor's Casino episode featured yesterday on the channel. So a little bit of a shout out, but yeah, Mr. Stormtrooper did want to be included in this episode, so I did have to include him, which is a good or bad thing if you care about that series. The first 2 minifigures on this list are the battle droids. Now, the battle droids do come with the newer dark grayish blaster, which I don't know how long it's been around, but it's definitely an interesting inclusion, specifically because you can kind of separate which blasters belong to your battle droids and which ones don't. It's kind of weird because I don't think that they do anything aside from like the small and regular size blaster, which is interesting. They do have a stud in the back, so you can put them in deployment position like this. They do have the standard droid arms, so you have one that can face outwards so that you can have a forward, and then one that's a bit of a side stud. Very interesting. You still can run them over very easily, which is probably the important part that you're going to need to do with this set. Next is the 187th Commander here, which is like your typical airborne trooper. You know, they've got some armor. They've got a little bit of light blue markings over there in like the corner of their pad, while the left pad or right pad, depending on how you're looking at it, is fully dark, so it has a little bit of extra plating, I would assume. There are a few straps just like out and about to kind of add a little bit of strapping, because they are an airborne trooper, so they kind of need that for like their parachute gear and stuff. They do have a few purple markings and about, which you would expect from this being a 187th clone trooper. They do have the standard 187th airborne trooper kind of look. I don't know why I said 187 specifically. They do have a few more straps on the back with just the classic not stormtrooper, but clone trooper attire. So it is definitely a very nice pickup, especially in that purple. It really is complemented by the white there, so it really does pop out, making for a very nice commander and something that you don't typically see in a Lego set, because we haven't seen one of these 187th troopers till now, which is very nice to see. Now we've got the 187th regular clone troopers, which is good to see 2 of them in here, especially since normally we don't see that many regular clone troopers added. Even though these are division based, I think they're very good, especially since we haven't seen these clone troopers before in like Lego formatting, which is very nice because the purple again looks very good. The left side here is the back with the head, because they all have the same head. It's just this blank expression with a few like jaw lines and then some just casual beady eyes just there, which is pretty interesting. The strap does continue on these ones, so unlike other clone troopers, they do actually have a continuation of the strap. They do have the regular base like back clone armor plating, but these ones do have a purple belt, which is very nice. I think that the purple belt really complements, and then the rest of it is just kind of plain and basic. The front, meanwhile, has a lot of blue markings just on the helmet, which is nice. They do have those indentation lines. They also do have like the purple chin bit, and they also have like a purple stripe, which is on top. Very nice in total. They also have like the T-shaped visor. Very interesting. They do have a continuation of that like black shoulder pad, which is interesting. Definitely a continuation from the Commander. Just a bit smaller this time, but they do have a bit of a larger silver strap other than this one, which had a much smaller like silver buckle. It is a little more noticeable on the regular trooper than that Commander. They do have that continuation of the purple belt on the front, which is very nice, and like the purple chest plating, which is very interesting. They do have more of those blue markings, which we saw in the Commander, just this time on the legs or pocket area. And then we also have those little bit of a different leg design over there for, instead of just a fully solid purple, they have a bit of white mixed in there, which is very nice. And then the feet are purple instead of the white with like a bit of black, which is very interesting. A lot of detail to go into these figures, but they are very nice figures, so I thought it would be important to cover them. Now we have Mace Windu, which is a very interesting character to see go along with his 187th Legion clone troopers. Very good to see. He does have a lot of detail with no dual mode leg printing, which is a little bit upsetting, but he does have arm printing, and he also has a bit of back printing. So there's a little bit of stuff there. There's a lot of substance. He does have his classic purple lightsaber with a bit of an angry expression compared to his clone troopers. On the right hand, you see a little bit of his like robe coming through with the white, with a little bit of like a comm system there, which is nice to see, so he's in constant communication, while the left arm has the Republic insignia on there, with again the white, which looks a very good balance to his like actual robe. Then his robe, as you'd expect, there's a bit of a belt so that he can holster his lightsaber onto, and then he's got a little bit of white that drags there towards like the knee area. On the back, there's a continuation of that belt and a bit of a triangle shape to kind of show some dents in the robe. Maybe that's his hood. Who really knows? It is very nice to see a Mace Windu, as it is very reminiscent of the one in the gunship. I think the only difference between these two, which I didn't quite realize, is that there isn't as much dust, because there's a small amount of just dust particles that I think are on the gunship version, which isn't on this one. So it's slightly different for anybody that actually cares, but aside from that, they are very similar, and it's good to see a lot of detail included in a set like this for like the majority of the characters, except for the battle droids, which could have probably been Geonosian, but who's counting? Now onto the set itself, which I think has a fantastic base and definitely had a lot of promise, and then they kind of built it up and it fell apart, because these turrets feel way too bulky and just out of place. There isn't enough detail on this wall, because if I take off this turret, you really see how bare it is and how really there's like no detail on there whatsoever. You pull the turret back on, back onto the socket, and it is a little bit difficult to do so, which is kind of annoying, especially if you kind of want to battle damage it. But you do get a lot of it hidden away, but now you just have this bulky turret in the way, which kind of, it does the job, but but definitely could have been executed. There's a lot of stickers, like I think I might have mentioned. I definitely felt it in the building process that there's a lot of stickers here that you can definitely notice. There's 3 of them on this, which is definitely interesting. And then the interior of this one doesn't even have a cockpit, so you can't even have like a control panel. So if you include a clone trooper in there, they don't even have a control panel to do anything. They do fit in there, so at least that's a plus side, but Still, they have no control panel, and there's no sticker inside to kind of identify that there is a control panel, which is kind of upsetting, especially if you want to use this for play. But there is a bit of a spot in there so that you can kind of toss in all the weapons that you need to and kind of have them. But then again, I'm going to try something. I'm going to see if you can actually fit a minifigure in there, because if so, that might be pretty useful, but who knows. So I found out that you can place a minifigure in there, and I found a way to place all the minifigures except for the 2 battle droids. Now I'm assuming you can probably, instead of Mace Windu, you can probably fit 2 battle droids. So if you want to compact this set down and just kind of store everything in this thing, it's definitely possible to attempt it, because you can definitely have one sitting there. You can probably even fit the 2 battle droids in there and somehow close it up pretty nicely, but you can definitely fit 2 of them in there, because if you kind of squeeze them in there, because of how the ramp is placed, you can fit 1 in there. It's a very tight fit, but hold on, let me lower the ramp a bit. It is definitely a little bit harder to do with one hand, but there you go, one of them has fallen on the floor. So now with that kind of taken care of, let's look at the small details. Now you've got another sticker on the cannon, of course you do, but here you've got a nice transition between white and the dark red, which is very nice. That looks really good together. You do have some instances of green, which kind of doesn't feel that intrusive. You expect it, you kind of expect it to be there. So that's nice. It doesn't feel out of place. You do get a little bit of detail. You can kind of see the wheels on the underneath section from the front, but it does kind of flow together and fit quite nicely. It does feel a little bulky, but then again, I feel like the bottom is probably the best part of this. Then when you go up, it kind of just feels like a big mess. So very unfortunate on that department. It does really feel out of place if you go from the bottom to the top, but the underside is very much dark with a little bit of tan. You can see that there's small wheels there. They are black, so they kind of fit in decently well. You can just kind of fire at the Emperor's palace over there if you want to, or not palace, but throne room, if you feel like it. You can take Mace Windu out of here and you can kind of stand him, although I doubt that Mace Windu would be sitting in the command post. I bet he'd be chopping up battle droids at the front lines, rather. So definitely an interesting spot, but you can fit your minifigures on here if you need to. It does look relatively flush if you kind of just ignore it and maybe focus in on small bits. But as a whole, is this worth your $40? If you're interested in 187th Legion, I think it's worth it if you definitely need that Mace Windu and you want the 187th, because this is a good way to get like a decently printed, and when I say decently, it's one of the better printed Mace Windus, because I don't know if he's ever had like fully like printing, and if you definitely want a Mace Windu but don't have the $350 to spend on the gunship, this is definitely a good way to get him, especially since you get some 187th Clone Troopers instead of a blue one. So it's definitely interesting why they couldn't just have done something else with that slot, because the yellow one is now in a $12 set. So if you really want the minifigures from that, you can just buy this one. And you do miss out on that dust, but I don't think you're really going to miss the dust that much. And then you've got yourself a relatively sizable hover tank. It's definitely sizable. I will give it that. It's definitely pretty big, considering if you compare it to something that's probably a bit larger scale on the Razor Crest. It kind of goes about halfway to like kind of the ramp edge, so it's definitely a bit large. It's definitely not like height-wise, it isn't the craziest thing, but it definitely does have some size to it for it having for it only having 262 pieces, because there's a lot of large like plate pieces in this, so I guess it kind of makes sense, although I'm not really trying to justify this. But if you're interested in the fighter tank, I definitely understand if you want to get it. It's very easy to get sold out because of the interest in these minifigures, I'm assuming, because the build itself is kind of mediocre at best, but the minifigure selection is very good on this. So take that with a grain of salt, and I hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Bye.